The philosophical school of Stoicism, which originated in ancient Greece, would find prominent adherents amongst the Roman Empire, where the concepts of virtue, wisdom, and courage were all considered tenets on the path to leading a good and just life. Stoics and the practice of Stoicism could be found in all levels of ancient Roman society, from the likes of the slave-born Epicetus to the official advisor of emperors in Seneca. Perhaps though the most famous Stoic, not just in Roman society, but of all time, is that of Marcus Aurelius, Roman emperor reigning from the years 161 to 180. Through these collections of minds, Stoicism flourished throughout ancient Rome, and the fundamentals of gratitude, wisdom, temperance, and resilience were aspects of a character that were held in very high regard. It's with such celebrated personalities as Marcus Aurelius have we seen Stoicism transcend time, to the point that one might argue that Stoicism, at least to the modern day Stoic, is more popular than ever. And it's not hard to see why. Stoicism, after all, seems to offer a lifestyle of discipline, focus, virtue, a surrendering of oneself to the pushes and pulls of life, whether for good or bad, as well as to develop a self-awareness whereby one might frequently examine their own beliefs, attitude, and thoughts in an effort to become better. The Stoic by this standard has no use for anger, hatred, jealousy, or general disdain. And whilst the Stoic may feel these emotions and feelings, they are human after all, they are not encouraged to act on them. With that in mind, it might beg the question as to how the ancient Stoics applied Stoicism to when things in their personal lives went a bit awry, specifically when their wives were found to be in the beds of other men. Indeed, the topic of today's video is how an ancient Stoic would have handled being cheated on, and lucky for us, we have an intriguing example from history from the granddaddy of Stoicism himself, Marcus Aurelius, whose cheating wife saw him respond in what some might say was not the most Stoic of ways. Special thanks to Mantasleep for making this video possible. Mantasleep wants you to take more naps. Heck, I'm already sold. According to Mantasleep, our bodies are wired to nap, and it is with naps that we can get a boost in focus, energy, and clarity. I'm sure we've all felt that post-lunch haze, the mid-afternoon blues, or just that can't be asked, I'll do it later feeling. And it's these sorts of things that Mantasleep is working towards fixing. How? Well, with one of these bad boys. This is the Manta Pro Sleep Mask that I've been using for my mid-afternoon naps, and whilst it was particularly hard for me to nap during the day, the mask soon made it quite simple. The premium material of the mask itself is very soft and very well put together, to the point that you can't necessarily feel it when you're wearing it. The fabric of the mask is also perforated, allowing for airflow and ventilation. It's very comfortable to wear, with zero eye pressure. There's also no need to worry about light getting in because the material allows for 100% blackout. If noise is a problem for you when you sleep, Mantasleep also have the Sound Sleep Mask available. This mask comes with razor-thin blue headphones, allowing you to listen to music, ASMR, or better yet, me. The mask comes with 20-hour battery life too, so you'll definitely have enough charge to last you through a nap, or even throughout the night. Check out Mantasleep's website now with my exclusive link, mantasleep.com/legends, for a range of different products that will help you work naps into your routine, or help you get a better sleep overall. You can also use my discount code LEGENDS for 10% off your order at checkout, excluding bundles. To many, Stoicism has become synonymous with emotionless, which is a bit unfair. Indeed, there are certain behaviours and reactions to circumstances that might come across as emotionless when demonstrated by the Stoic. But in actuality, the Stoic is constantly reflecting on their behaviour and reactions, as well as choosing which circumstances requires which emotion, if any. In the right hands, Stoicism is a tool that promotes self-mastery. It is a manner by which a person might persevere through hardship, and it aims to cultivate an emotional wisdom that serves not only the practitioner, but everyone around them. Lebanese-American essayist Nassim Taleb describes Stoicism as a Stoic is someone who transforms fear into prudence, pain into transformation, mistakes into initiation, and desire into undertaking. At its core, Stoicism can be defined by two ways. Number one, a set of ethical values that helps the practitioner achieve a balanced life, categorized by happiness, resilience, and peace of mind from doing the right thing. And number two, a set of practices that teaches the practitioner to reduce stress, control their negative emotions through self-awareness, and act with discipline, wisdom, and rationality in the face of any circumstance. With this definition, you might be wondering how a Stoic would respond to an affair, a betrayal if you will. Well, for starters, it's plausible that the Stoic wouldn't be particularly surprised, considering that betrayals are a part of life, and that this would not be a concept so alien to them that they would not know how to navigate it. Secondly, they would be expected to act with grace. They wouldn't accuse or blame or burn their partner's things, but instead respond with a certain calmness or understanding as to why the betrayal transpired. Thirdly, the Stoic would ponder on these events and not allow the circumstance to upset them. If it did, then this would be an area of themselves for them to work on. Finally, the Stoic would either pardon the person for their infidelity or decide to move on without them. Seneca wrote of transgressions, "Bestow pardon for many things, seek pardon for none," showing us that the Stoic could do no wrong when it came to forgiving a person, but that the error would be to ask for forgiveness, in the sense that forgiveness ought to be earned, and that the ideal Stoic did not transgress, so he would not be seeking forgiveness anyway. This sentiment is echoed by Marcus Aurelius himself in his Meditations, where we are told, "Hold yourself to a very high standard, and don't make excuses when you fail to meet it. Meanwhile, leave other people to their standards, and make every excuse you can when they fail. Be tough on yourself, be understanding to your fellow citizens." Through this, it might be gathered that the Stoic would eventually forgive their partner of infidelity, on the account that they know they cannot control their partner's behaviours and choices, and then likely end the relationship. The sentiment here is that so long as the Stoic doesn't make the mistake, then a well-balanced and happy life can still be achieved. In addition to this, we know from Epicetus' writings that the traditional Stoic would probably walk away from the relationship out of self-perseverance, for Epicetus tells us that if a companion is dirty, his friends cannot help but get a little dirty too, no matter how clean they started out. This implies that whilst the Stoic might want to stay with the person after the affair, they know that the adulterer is no good for them, and that they themselves would eventually become compromised by continued association. Put simply, the most Stoic thing a Stoic could do under these circumstances is to acknowledge that the affair had transpired and then walk away with grace and dignity. Marcus Aurelius states in his Meditations that we need to excuse what our sparring partners do and just keep our distance without suspicion or hatred. It's pretty sound advice to even those who don't practice Stoicism, and a fairly appropriate way to deal with any sort of betrayal. But let's see how Marcus Aurelius really handled this sort of thing when we visit a late collection of Roman biographies believed to have emerged from the 4th century. According to the Historia Augusta, a text that has since been heavily scrutinized for its embellishments and dramatizations, it should be noted, Marcus Aurelius' wife, Faustina the Younger, became infatuated with a young gladiator, whom she could not resist, and ended up sleeping with him. The Historia Augusta tells us, on a certain occasion, it was said Faustina, the daughter of Pius and wife of Marcus, saw some gladiators pass by, and was inflamed for love of one of them, and afterwards, when suffering from a long illness, she confessed the passion to her husband. Now, as we've established from Stoicism, it would naturally appear that Marcus Aurelius would acknowledge the affair, digest it in a graceful way, and then probably just move on, maybe divorcing his wife and keeping as much distance from her as possible. But as the text tells us, Marcus Aurelius wasn't that above such a thing as infidelity. The text continues to tell us that, and when Marcus reported this to the Chaldeans, It was their advice that Faustina should bathe in the man's blood, and thus couch with her husband. What we are essentially told here is that when Aurelius found out about the affair, he had the gladiator executed under the advice of the Chaldeans, and then had his wife Faustina the Younger bathe in his blood. Now, this might sound like a pretty sadistic revenge, and for all we know, it might very well have been. But an additional reason for this graphic display was not necessarily to punish Faustina the Younger for her adultery, but to actually reconcile. You see, according to legend, a gladiator's blood was kind of like an aphrodisiac, and that by some magical property, it would rejuvenate the passion between two people, in this case, between Faustina and Aurelius. Still, some might say that killing your romantic rival could be perceived as being kind of cathartic, and then having your cheating wife bathe in his blood would sure teach her a lesson. I mean, I'm no Stoic, and I'm all for getting even, but this seems a bit over the top. On the other hand, some might say that whilst this was a grueling and harrowing process for everyone involved, it did have some merit, because it showed that Aurelius did want to reconcile with his wife, by increasing the passion and desire between them via this gladiator's blood. The text tells us that once this was done, their passion was indeed increased, and it is implied that Faustina the Younger never strayed again. Interestingly, towards the end of this account, the Historia Augusta tells us a bit about Aurelius' thoughts about divorcing or even killing Faustina the Younger, to which he actually does give a bit of a Stoic response, by using reason to deduce an acceptable solution. He states, "If we send our wives away, we must also return their dowries." I imagine this to be somewhat Stoic because Aurelius is using reason and logic to determine whether or not to banish or keep Faustina the Younger. He's not shown here to be angry or jealous or resentful, but rather appears to take it in his stride and weigh up his options, this being whether her dowry is worth keeping her. And what was her dowry? Just the entire empire, really. Historia Augusta tells us that after Aurelius had been adopted by Pius, the previous Roman emperor and Faustina the Younger's father, Aurelius had essentially married into the role of emperor, and that if he was to divorce or banish Faustina, then he'd also have to return all of his power, which he was never going to do. So yes, whilst this response to his wife's affair was a bit extreme, you might also argue that it did come from a Stoic approach, because whilst it was unusual and sadistic to make your wife bathe in her lover's blood, it did have a purpose beyond revenge or anger, and that was reconciliation. There's an understanding here that if Faustina underwent this process, it would bring her and Aurelius closer together, and so with this in mind, one might argue that there is some rational and deliberate thought process to this, and not just a gory retribution to make his wife feel uncomfortable. The Historia Augusta is quite bold with its narrative, but it doesn't stop there. In fact, it aims to frame Commodus, Marcus Aurelius' son, as the illegitimate offspring between Faustina the Younger and this elusive gladiator. The text tells us that Commodus was born a gladiator, and not really a prince, further suggesting that this was the reason Commodus was so different from Marcus Aurelius, and why the would-be emperor was more ruffian and savage than he was political and stoic. In fact, the text even tells us that, as emperor, he fought almost 1,000 gladiatorial bouts before the eyes of the people. To a minority of historians, this is plausible because Commodus did not appear to inherit any of his father's wisdom, virtue, or just common sense. It was with his rule that led to the destabilization of the Roman economy, and subsequently a civil war. Not just this, but his antics within the arena and his gravitation towards the lifestyle of a gladiator makes it seem more likely that Commodus was the child of someone else entirely, someone more like that of a brawny gladiator than a wise emperor. The Historia Augusta tells us, this is the reason that the son of so virtuous a prince had habits worse than any trainer of gladiators, any play actor, any fighter in the arena, anything brought into existence from the offscourings of all dishonour and crime. With all that being said, we can't talk about Historia Augusta without mentioning the controversy surrounding such a text. Whilst believed to have been structured like the 12 Caesars by Suetonius, a set of biographies about the first Roman emperors from Augustus to Domitian, the Historia Augusta centres around the reigns between Diocletian and Constantine I. The authorship of the work, its date, and pretty much everything that was written inside of it have long since been debated amongst historians, with many choosing to defenerate the book and class it as fiction. Indeed, many of the accounts in the text cannot be corroborated, and the general consensus surrounding the text is that it was written sometime around the late 4th century by a single author aiming to blend contemporary issues of his time into that of the emperors who had lived some 200 years before him. Whether the episode between Aurelius, Faustina and her lover is true or not does not take away from the emperor's Stoic reputation. On the one hand, you could just as easily dismiss the account as fiction, as have many historians, but if you were to acknowledge it, you could argue that based on Aurelius's intentions to reconnect with his wife and continue his marriage, if only for the sake of the empire itself, that this was still a pretty Stoic decision. Now, am I supporting the notion that cheaters ought to bathe in the blood of their lovers? No. But I am supporting the notion that one ought to make logical and practical decisions where possible, and like Aurelius, should aim to navigate troubles of the heart with reason, hopefully without the literal bloodbath. Let me know what you thought about today's episode, and tell me about your affairs and how you got even, or didn't get even and chose the high road. As always, don't forget to give this video a like and don't forget to subscribe for more content just like this. Until next time.